I've been working for about 12 hours a day, and here's some tips on how I stay motivated for game dev. So, the points I'll explain are: doing a little now sets me up to do more later. Look up to people who have achieved success and steal their attitudes. Try a journal. Don't accidentally remove your source of motivation. Focus on your impact in a way that's meaningful to you, such that the game is worth the difficulty. Ensure your work is put on the correct things. First, doing a little now sets me up to do more later because I build momentum. I've always found this to be true in all my different situations. For example, working on World of Cubes, I went from implementing just 2 features that I promised I'd add to over 8 hours a day of work for multiple weeks. When I got into art, I started by just practicing for 30 minutes a day, and eventually that became over 4 focused hours per day for 2 years. My Tetris game video project was meant to be 5 minutes a day, but some days I would just have more energy, so I'd put multiple hours in. To summarize, if you start now, it'll be easier to care about the project later. When you care about it, putting time in is easy. Second, I follow successful people and am open to their attitudes. Your current attitude might just be setting you up for later dissatisfaction in how much you got done. I'm a fan of Hayao Miyazaki and Jonathan Blow for pursuit of craft and passion. Next, track in a journal. This is a way for me to develop a ritual and love for what I'm doing. I used to plan my next day's art studies the night before with just 1 line of the notepad, and now I filled pages and pages of this notepad. Another time in my life, I would schedule 6 hours of intensive study for multiple crafts, and then that night I would reflect how well I did, rating 1 through 5. The advantage of this is that it's fun and definitely made me put time in. The disadvantage is that strictly regimenting might not line up with the best way my brain can be working, and it may not be the best way to improve in a craft. And I can only know whether that's true after a few weeks of getting used to whatever plan I have, because initial resistance does not count as valuable information, in my opinion. Importantly, making lifestyle changes while deep into a project can be a mistake. It sounded good to cut out internet once and for all, but one thing I missed is that internet is actually a motivation generator. Sharing my work on projects and seeing others work on projects is very fun and makes me want to do more. I didn't consider that what surrounds me is not inconsequential to why I'm doing what I'm doing. Maybe if you're dissatisfied, then make changes. But as I've been working 12 hours every day for the past few weeks, maybe the best thing is to simply maintain it and not go against what got me there. Next, I'm growing enthused about history and how what we do in our limited lives will have an impact on art history in the future. There's also the impact on living people right now. My latest multiplayer game will give young adults the ability to relax and socialize in a safe situation. If you convince yourself that this has a meaning beyond your suffering, then that may really push you through. Finally, being focused on how the work you put in will make the finished game in your head can actually be very motivating. As a game programmer, it's very appealing to spend a long time on debug systems, or improving my multiplayer game's updater, or making really pretty graphics, but whether or not I do that might be inconsequential to whether or not the game will be good and succeed. One way I adhere to this is I don't make game engines at all. I just make the code that specifically runs my game. I want to do a lot of fancy debug tools, but in reality, I just need the ones that will actually be worth the time spent implementing. And I can always make fancy graphics later once I know the game is good. Knowing I'm focusing on actionable things that will bring my project to its release state has been pretty helpful for feeling good about my work. So, those are my tips for staying motivated in game dev. In summary, doing a little now sets you up for more later. Follow successful people for their attitudes. Try using a journal. Beware of accidentally changing what gives you motivation. Focus on your historical and world impact. Let yourself be logically satisfied with putting work into the correct parts. Have you worked on your project today as much as you'd like? If not, what's stopping you? And how will you reconcile that? If you're interested in learning game development or furthering your craft, enjoy this book I wrote. Awesome Game Dev has many anecdotes, inspirations, and useful resources to learn from. I sought to push your brain in interesting directions for the sake of the craft. Available on Amazon via the link in the description.